Welcome back to another episode with ByrdAdatto. This episode, we're going to address some more familiar topics. But Michael, I feel like maybe this is the wrong way to use it, but have you remember the song "Under Pressure"?
Yeah, Queen.
Yeah, that's
Why do
right.
you ask?
Yes, and I feel like this song, there's obviously a lot to it, but it's putting pressure, putting down on me, pressing you down, no matter what you ask for, and that's how I feel right now with our clients. Our clients are asking us; they're under pressure. They've been closed for a long time, especially in states where elective medical services have been forbidden or limited, and now they're on this massive pressure from a financial perspective as they need to get back open, but there's a lot of confusion. Are they even allowed to open?
Well, first, thank you for not singing and just telling me the lyrics. I appreciate that. And the conflict happens, and we're starting to see this just broadly. The governor comes down with here's the restrictions, and then now we're starting to see that they'll lessen the restrictions. So they're starting to open things up. But you may have a county or a city that still imposes stronger restrictions that are in conflict with a governor's order.
Right, and so because of that, because there's so much conflict out there, we brought back a special guest again, who's been on the show before. But Michael, I think maybe you could introduce our special guest.
Yes, Sam Pondrom with our office. He's an attorney, and this is his second appearance on these videos. And Sam has been helping look at these kind of conflict in law and who has the ultimate authority type issues. And Sam would kind of love to hear your thoughts on that.
I appreciate you having me back. It's kind of interesting because Dallas has been unique in it's more restrictive than the state, and in looking at it, you just sort of assume the state supersedes. But when you dive into the law, essentially the governor empowers certain people in cities or counties to be kind of little governors who can direct the emergency response on an appropriate local scale. And so in looking at this, it looks like if you're in Dallas County, you really do need to follow what Judge Clay Jenkins has said, because if you look at like GA 16, which was broader, Abbott specifically preempts the ability of these local directors to change the order in certain specified ways. And that's not something he did in GA 15, which controls the elective procedure issue. So essentially, unless or until he expressly preempts Dallas County or, local issues in general, we should follow Dallas County.
Perfect. And the worst part is that's not the only spot where there's some confusion. So we have confusion with the governor and the counties, and in some cases cities, and which we're going to get to in a second. But Michael, here in Texas, we still have some conflict at play as to what the governor actually said, and then what the medical board has released its update, and there's a lot of confusion as to what procedures are being allowed to be done in an office space versus how clear the governor's order and the medical board is on an actually licensed facility. So maybe you can spend just a minute just kind of giving an update to individuals what's happening there.
So Friday, a week ago, the governor came down with an order to lessen restrictions. It was anticipated by many that he was going to do so, and that he was going to start opening Texas up by opening up elective procedures. The problem is that elective procedures covers a wide swath as the way it worked in Texas, and we're talking about basically anything that wasn't almost an urgent type care fell into the elective bucket as related to the governor's order. And so that there was kind of two categories that opened things up, and it was pretty difficult to understand from reading it exactly where that line was, and whether surgeries in a office suite were opened up, and whether or not kind of non-invasive procedures in an office were opened up? And the initial answer was no, they weren't. And that was based on the reading of the order itself. The TMB basically just adopted what the governor's order said, and then our channels with representatives that were interacting with the governor's office and the medical board kind of reiterated that. We understand that the medical board has shifted in its stance, but we have nothing in writing. And non-invasive procedures, which may include med spa procedures and procedures like that, are allowed under the order as interpreted by the medical board, but we don't have anything in writing. So it makes it risky at this point to go forward, because all we have is the governor's order and medical board's initial kind of reinforcement of that order. And what we're finding is we have clients that are kind of going forward thinking that their intent is for them to be okay, and they're opening up and allowing med spa procedures and stuff like that, or they're waiting until they have something definitive in writing before they assume that risk.
Yeah, and this goes back to, this is another pause moment where everyone's going to have different risk tolerance as to what they're comfortable with. And some of our clients, as you said, have that ability. They feel comfortable where they stand. And I know we'll have a whole other thing on reopening on another time, but for those who haven't reopened, there's a lot to consider. But I want to jump real quick to another state, Sam, so we're not just focused on Texas. California, as we've talked about in the past, has had certain restrictions in place, completely different than the way Texas wrote them. Maybe you can give an update as to what's happening there with conflicts between, again, cities and like San Francisco, and then the governor's order.
Yeah, California there's a bit of disparity there. The state never really fully prohibited elective procedures. It basically said they're discouraged and they want to focus personnel and supplies on those who are sickest, those who are the most in need. And California's also got a COVID-19 response website, and in its FAQs, it says, elective procedures should be canceled or postponed, but it's a website. It doesn't really carry the weight of law. So we have this strong suggestion at the state level, but nothing really firm. And like you said, San Francisco, for example, at the city or county level, San Francisco's been hit very hard, and their city health officer issued an order early on that basically said elective surgeries, which includes cosmetic surgery, cosmetic procedures, need to be canceled, postponed, or rescheduled as long as that delay doesn't reasonably, foreseeably kind of impact a patient's health negatively. And they recently just extended this order until May 3rd. And unless cases start falling in San Francisco, all signs are pointing to further extension. So there again, the city is much more strict in their interpretation of this than the state. And then California, quite often people will look to the medical board, but the medical board of California hasn't even really issued an official response. And we've heard anecdotally that there's good candor if you can reach out to them and get a hold of them, but getting hold of them is a whole new challenge, based on the volume of calls. So we would suggest reaching out to them if you have the time and opportunity.
Yeah, and I think the last thing from a follow-up on that one is those clients in states, I obviously only mentioned two of them, that that you're uncertain. At the end of the day, you need to go back to understanding that if you're a licensed provider, you have to answer to your board at some point. And if you do, remember that you need to follow what's considered the standard of care in your community. And if you're the only one out there doing certain procedures, it most likely will be frowned upon. Remember that at the end of the day, the patient's welfare is important. And if you're rendering certain services during a pandemic in which the person could get COVID-19 and you haven't given them enough a warning or taken enough precautions to protect that patient, that's where you're actually being exposed, both from a malpractice perspective and obviously with your board. But those are the important factors on any state that you go to. So just keep that in mind if you are considering opening. And I don't know if Michael, if you have any other follow-up thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be an issue across the country. I just had a call before we shot this video with someone in Colorado. Colorado opened things up as of Monday, and this particular client was in a county that is shut down till May 8th, and so he's closed until May 8th. And so it's going to be, I think, something that will be really common throughout the country over the kind of this next phase of dealing with COVID.
Awesome. Well, Sam, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Michael, good to see you as always. And thanks for joining us again.